Welcome to the End Times book series for children podcast, where fun meets learning in the most captivating way. Today, we're diving into a special story, a magical encounter between legendary writer George Bernard Shaw and a brilliant Islamic scholar, Maulana Abdul Aleem Siddiqui, way back in 1935. This isn't just a history lesson. This is a journey into the values of peace, knowledge, and understanding. The same values shared by both Islam and Christianity. And it gets better. This series, developed by brother Amani Chifwete from Mombasa, Kenya, is packed with wisdom, inspired by the teachings of Maulana Sheikh Imran Hosein. You don't want to miss this conversation. So, if you're ready to learn, explore, and grow through exciting stories and respectful interfaith dialogue, hit that subscribe button and stay with us until the end. Let's make learning fun, one page at a time. Fun and Learn End Times series for children, the encounter of George Bernard Shaw and the Islamic scholar. Adopted from Maulana Sheikh Imran Nazar Hosein's book. Developed by brother Amani Chifwete, Mombasa, Kenya. Listen, learn, and enjoy the podcast. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Okay, so get this. Picture it. 1935, Mombasa.
Okay.
You've got George Bernard Shaw, the sharp-tongued Irish playwright,
Yeah.
bumping into Maulana Abdul Aleem Siddiqui, who is a leading Islamic scholar.
Right.
Now, Shaw wasn't just there for the sunshine.
No.
He was actually on his way to South Africa and made a pit stop specifically to chat with Siddiqui.
Yeah, which tells you something about Shaw, right?
Right.
This wasn't just a casual, hello, let's have tea.
Exactly.
This was a man known for, relishing a good debate.
Yeah.
Actively seeking out a deeper understanding of Islam.
Yes.
And I think in Siddiqui, he really found the perfect guide.
And here's where it gets even more interesting for this deep dive. Our main source is a
Yeah.
children's book, of all things.
Oh, wow.
It recounts their conversation in a way to kind of introduce young minds to Islam.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
To use that as our lens.
Yeah.
It adds a whole other layer to it, I think.
Totally. And I think it just shows how crucial it is to open up those lines of communication and understanding
Yeah.
from such a young age.
Absolutely.
And so the book uses this format of questions that Shaw had,
Okay.
making these complex topics super accessible.
Right.
So you're kind of right there with Shaw,
Yeah.
eager to hear how Siddiqui responds, right?
Yeah.
And one of the first things that Shaw brings up is this big looming misconception about Islam equaling violence.
Yeah, which persists even today,
Yes,
sadly.
But Siddiqui tackles it head on.
Okay.
He doesn't just say Islam values peace.
Yeah.
He explains how the concept of jihad, which is so often misinterpreted,
Yeah.
is truly about self-defense.
Self-defense, right?
He even points out that the Quran straight up forbids forced conversion,
Wow.
which I bet challenges a lot of assumptions people might have.
Absolutely. It dismantles this whole narrative of, Islam spreading by the sword, right?
Totally.
And to really drive the point home,
Yeah.
he quotes a verse from the Quran
Okay.
that states, "Let there be no compulsion in religion."
Yeah.
So, imagine the impact of this on Shaw,
Yeah.
a playwright,
Yeah.
grappling with these complex themes of power and belief.
Right.
And then to hear this directly from the Quran.
Directly from the Quran.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me how the book, even though it's for kids, does not shy away from these potentially, sensitive topics.
Right.
It tackles them head on in a way that's both informative and age appropriate.
And don't you think that's crucial in today's world? This idea of starting these conversations early.
Totally.
Laying that groundwork for understanding and tolerance from a young age.
Absolutely. It's like planting seeds of empathy early on.
Yeah.
So kind of moving on from the topic of violence.
Okay.
Shaw, being the logician he was,
Right.
really found himself drawn to the emphasis on reason within Islam.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think,
Okay.
because, Siddiqui explains that Islam isn't about blind faith.
Mm-hmm.
It encourages critical thinking,
Yeah.
questioning,
Interesting.
seeking evidence.
Wow.
He emphasizes that doubt is not the opposite of faith, but a catalyst for deeper understanding.
That's a good aha moment right there.
Right.
Yeah, you can almost picture Shaw
Yeah.
with
Oh,
his
yeah.
reputation for, like, wit
Yeah.
and skepticism,
Yeah.
leaning in, fully engaged
What's
with
the
this
man?
idea.
And it seems like this emphasis on evidence really struck a chord with him,
Right.
particularly when they get to the Quran's preservation.
Okay.
You know, Shah, familiar with all the debates around the Bible and its many interpretations,
Right.
was curious about how the Quran remained unchanged
Yeah, that's a question that often comes up
all the
in
time.
these dialogues.
Yeah.
So how did Siddiqui address that?
He explains that the Quran, since its revelation, has been meticulously preserved, like word for word.
Wow.
And it's not just about the written text.
Okay.
He highlights the role of what's called the hufaz.
Okay.
These are individuals who dedicate their lives to memorizing the entire Quran.
Wait, hold on. Memorizing the entire Quran.
The entire Quran!
That's incredible.
It's remarkable, right?
Yeah.
Imagine the level of dedication
Yeah.
and the crucial role they played in preserving its authenticity.
Oh.
Especially in a time when printing presses were, like, unheard of, you know?
Yeah, right.
Imagine Shaw,
Yeah.
accustomed to the world of theater and the written word,
Right.
trying to wrap his head around that kind of oral tradition.
It really adds a whole other dimension to the concept of a holy book, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not just a text,
Right.
but a living tradition passed down.
Exactly. And it highlights this key difference between, like, the historical context of scriptural transmission
Okay.
in, Christianity and Islam. This is already so fascinating, and we've only just scratched the surface of their conversation. I know.
But let's shift gears a bit now and delve into a slightly heavier topic that Shaw was particularly curious about.
Okay.
Heaven and hell.
Ooh. Yeah, heaven and hell. It's a question, that's really captivated theologians and philosophers for centuries, right?
Yeah.
And Siddiqui's response, I think, is quite illuminating, even for a modern audience.
Okay.
He presents heaven, or Jannah, as it's known in Arabic, and hell, or Jahannam, not as these, like, literal places, but as metaphors.
Metaphors. Yeah, so not about, like, fire and brimstone or pearly gates.
Exactly.
Okay.
He explains that these concepts, they're kind of beyond human comprehension.
Yeah.
But they serve this, vital purpose to guide our understanding of morality and the consequences of our actions.
So it's more about the underlying message, that our choices matter.
Yes.
They have repercussions.
Yes.
Even if we don't know exactly what form those repercussions might take.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that, our actions in this life have weight and meaning.
Right.
And that even though we can't fully grasp the nature of the afterlife, right?
Yeah.
Striving to live a virtuous life is paramount.
That's a really insightful way to approach it, I think.
Yeah.
You can almost imagine Shaw, a man who loved to kind of, challenge conventions.
Right.
Finding this interpretation both refreshing but also intellectually stimulating, right?
Absolutely. It speaks to, like, this universal human desire, I think, to make sense of life, death, and what might lie beyond.
Right.
But moving on from the ethereal realm, let's talk about a topic that often sparks quite a bit of debate.
Okay.
The perceived conflict between Islam and science.
Ah, yes, that age-old debate.
Right.
How does Siddiqui address this seemingly complex relationship?
He tackles it head on, basically.
Okay.
He emphasizes that Islam doesn't see faith and reason as being at odds with each other.
Okay.
In fact, he argues that they can actually complement and enrich one another.
That's interesting. So it's not a case of choosing one over the other.
No, not at all.
Right.
In fact, Siddiqui highlights how many scientific advancements we take for granted today have roots in what's called the Islamic Golden Age, which was this period of just incredible intellectual flourishing, right?
Right.
He mentions figures like Ibn Sina, known as Avicenna in the West, a polymath who made, like, significant contributions to medicine, astronomy, philosophy.
Wow, I'm actually embarrassed to admit I hadn't heard of Ibn Sina before.
Well, that's precisely the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
That many in the West aren't aware of these immense contributions of Islamic scholars throughout history.
It really challenges you to kind of rethink those narratives
Right.
that often pit, like, religion and science against each other.
Because in many ways, they were often working in tandem, driven by this shared thirst for knowledge and understanding the world around them.
It makes you realize how interconnected things really are.
It is.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From peace to reason to science.
Right.
But towards the end of their conversation,
Yeah.
it seems like the focus shifts to something that feels particularly relevant today. Common ground.
Yes. The book highlights how Shah and Siddiqui really kind of honed in on the similarities between Islam and Christianity.
Yeah.
And you can just sense this real shift in tone as they delve into like shared roots and prophets.
Now, this sounds like a crucial part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Especially given, the current global climate.
Yeah.
What specific similarities did they focus on?
Well, they talk about how both faiths trace their lineage back to Abraham,
Okay.
a patriarch who was revered in both Islam and Christianity.
Right.
Siddiqui emphasizes that Jesus, a central figure in Christianity, is also considered a prophet in Islam.
Wait, really? I had no idea Jesus was recognized in the Quran.
Oh, yeah.
What else does it say about that?
So the book, in a way that's accessible for, young readers, explains that Muslims see Jesus as a prophet and a messenger of God,
Okay.
but not as the son of God.
Okay.
It touches upon Mary, his mother, being held in high regard in Islam.
Even for someone like myself who considers themselves fairly knowledgeable about,
Yeah.
world religions and things like that,
Right.
this conversation is eye-opening.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sometimes it's the simplest narratives,
Right.
like those found in children's books, that can offer the most profound insights.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what are some key takeaways our listeners should hold on to? I think for me, the biggest takeaway, honestly, is how even just like a short conversation can reveal like these surprising common grounds
Yeah.
between belief systems that on the surface seem worlds apart.
Yeah. It really highlights how important these interfaith dialogues are.
Totally.
And it reminds us that, recognizing these connections, it isn't about like erasing differences. It's about fostering, understanding and respect
Yeah.
between these faith communities.
Yeah, it's about building bridges instead of walls, right?
Sure, exactly.
Especially in a world that often feels so divided.
Totally, totally.
And what I find like particularly striking is, a children's book.
I know, right.
Through this encounter between Shah and Siddiqui,
Right.
it manages to touch upon these like nuanced theological topics
Yeah.
in a way that's so engaging and insightful.
It's amazing.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, like, if a children's book can spark these kinds of conversations,
Right.
imagine the potential for greater understanding. If we all kind of approach these topics with a similar openness
Literally.
and curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's never too early or too late to start these conversations.
So true. And, thinking about George Bernard Shaw,
Right.
a man known for his, like, sharp wit, skepticism,
Yeah.
actively seeking out this conversation with Maulana Siddiqui, it makes me think,
What's that?
if someone like Shaw was so open to learning about a faith that wasn't his own, what does that say about, our own pursuit of knowledge?
That's a powerful thought to leave our listeners with.
It really is.
Yeah.
So until our next deep dive, I encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds open.
Keep learning.
You never know what surprising connections and insights you might uncover.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us.